Hi, just a quick video. Today we have on the workbench a NuTone IM5000 Intercom Control Unit, and what makes this IM5000 Control Unit special and unique and different than every other one that I've worked on in the last 10 years or so is that this one actually belongs to me. No, it's not from my home. It's actually my shop IM5000, and it's the one I use for testing and other purposes when people send me equipment that needs to be repaired. And the other day when I went to set it up to use it for something, lo and behold, it didn't work. So I thought I'd do a quick video to show you that it's not just your folks' intercom equipment that can fail suddenly or unexpectedly. It's also the NuTone repair guys stuff that can fail also. So about 2 weeks ago, I went to set it up. I use this for a variety of different purposes. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes I'll take it out in the field and use it at a customer's home that has an IM5000 system with a problem, and it's a quick, easy, convenient way to figure out whether they have a problem with their IM5000 control unit, or if it might be a wiring problem or a remote speaker problem. And so that's a quick and easy thing to do, but that in reality only happens maybe once or twice a year. Most of the time what I use this for is when people send me their inside remote stations that have a problem. Maybe you've got an IS515 or 518 inside station that isn't working correctly. Maybe it's 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 12 that isn't working correctly, and they send it to me for repair. Or an IS519 patio station, which are the most common ones we get in because they're outside and they can have water damage and things like that. And it's a quick and easy way for me to set up a little IM5000 system. I've got some IS515 speakers here at the shop that I use. These are all known good ones. And I can make up a little system with 2 or 3 of my speakers that I know that are good, and then add their speaker into the system and see what it's doing or not doing, and then work on it. And it's a nice convenient way to do that because it's a small unit. It's very compact. It's easy to hook it all up, just push it off to the side while I'm working on their station they sent me, and then bring it back, power it back up. It's just a nice convenient thing to have. The other thing I like to use it for, probably the best thing that I use it for, is when I repair chime modules. So we get a lot of chime modules in, and we will do a rebuild exchange program with people that send them in, and over time I might accumulate 15 or 20 or 25 chime modules that need to be repaired, and that's what I do a chime module day. I set up to do one chime module after another. I sort them out by different styles, and I have all the parts for each style, and it's more efficient to go through them one after the next, after the next, after the next. And having an IM5000 control unit is a really convenient way to do chime modules. For instance, here's one here. This is a really early IA28 with the green board. And this is one of my shop chime modules. It's a known good one. That's why I keep it here. And when you're repairing chime modules, maybe you're doing 25 or 30 at a time, all you have to do is have one remote station connected to this, so you have a place for the audio to come out. And after you work on the chime module, you just plug it into the control unit like this. You can turn it on. You can short across the connections on the chime module, and you can hear it ring in the remote speaker. So again, it's a nice, convenient, compact way. Just plug it in, turn it on, test it, turn it off, unplug it, and move on to the next one. So it's a nice, convenient thing to have here at the shop, and it saves me a lot of time when I'm working on your equipment for repair. So a couple weeks ago, I pulled this out. I went to set it up, hook up a speaker to it, and I was going to do some chime modules. I had a few extra hours one afternoon. I figured I would do a bunch of chime modules, and lo and behold, the intercom speaker didn't work. There was no communication. When you set up a little mini system, even if it's just to repair chime modules, you should make sure everything's functioning correctly. That's just kind of part of the normal routine of what we would do around here. And so I had one speaker connected to it, and it wasn't working. So I connected up a door speaker and 2 other known good speakers, and those weren't working either, and it was obvious to me that my IM5000, something had happened to it and it wasn't functioning correct. This particular IM5000, this was made probably sometime in the mid-90s. I didn't find an actual code date on it, but as I recall, it was probably 95 or 96 or maybe even 97 at the latest. And the history on this unit was it was in a customer's home and they had a problem with it. And I don't recall whether we had sent it back to NuTone for, it was a warranty issue at that time. So in 2004, it was repaired at NuTone under warranty. And I would assume it worked when we reinstalled it in the customer's home. And then again in 2005, it went back to NuTone again because apparently whatever they did to it the first time didn't hold up, and so they had another problem with it, and it went back again. And then they sent, I remember that service call because they sent it back to me, and I think what I remember is that they said they couldn't duplicate the problem, and of course we had checked it out pretty thoroughly on the service call at the customer's home, and we went out, reinstalled it, and indeed it still didn't work correctly. So I contacted the national service manager at NuTone. I explained it to him, and of course the homeowner was a little perturbed because they had been without it for a couple weeks already and they didn't want to be without it for a longer period of time. So I talked to this national service manager and he said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to send you a brand new one and you can install it in the customer's house under warranty, and that way he's happy. And we did that, and that was all fine, I'm guessing, because that was what, 12 years ago. So I haven't heard anything about it since. He'll probably call this afternoon now. But as for this particular unit, service manager said, no, we don't really need to have it back. Why don't you just go ahead and hang on to it? If you can fix it and use it, that's great. But there's no sense in us sending it back because we don't really want it for any particular reason. So I acquired it. It was what they would call no charge, which means I got it for free, which is good. And actually, I went through it and found the problem and repaired it, and it became my shop unit ever since. So for the last 12 years or so, this gets used, you know, probably 3 or 4 times a month, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And it was actually, I was actually kind of surprised and a little annoyed when I pulled it out and set it up and it didn't work. And it was just yesterday that I finally had enough time to get to it and take a look at it. And what I found was there was one. The first thing you do on a set like this when you're trying to diagnose a problem, because it's a fairly simple set in that it only does one thing. It powers the remote speakers, it has the door inputs and all like that. So when you have nothing that works, you have to start somewhere, and the first place you start is you measure voltages around on the board, and you're looking for different circuits to see where the voltages may be wrong, and that's an indicator of where the problem may be, and so on and so on. And what I found was this has many different power rails in it, and what I found was there was a 5-volt power rail that instead of it putting out 5 volts, it was putting out somewhere around 0.8 volts, which is way too low, of course. So the first thing I did was repair that power rail circuit, and while that improved it slightly, I think we went from 0.8 to like 1.4 volts, it obviously wasn't right still because it's supposed to be 5 volts give or take. And so a little more diagnosing of what part of the board that circuit is powering. The easiest way to do that is you start taking the circuit that 5-volt power rail is powering and you start pruning it off, looking for where the problem may lie. And it's a fairly small circuit. There isn't really that much in it. And what I found was I removed this integrated circuit right here. This is a little Schmidt trigger. And when I pulled that out, the power rail went right back up to 5.2 volts, which is good. That's just where you want it. A little more than 5, but that's fine. And I replaced this chip, and it came back to life. Everything worked again. So for some reason this chip failed, and it failed shorted inside, and it was dragging the 5-volt power rail down, and that's why it wasn't working. So since I had it on the bench already and I had it apart and I had done some work on it, I thought, well, it might be a good time to do a little bit of general maintenance on it, like all the sets I do when you send them to me. So let's go ahead and take the heatsink cover off here. These screws are sometimes hard to get out, especially if they've been taken out many times, as this one I think has. Alright, so down here we have the power supply, so let me go ahead and flip this around and show you. This is primarily the power supply section of the IM5000, and power supply sections, like in every intercom, those are the points that will fail first typically, and when the power supply sections fail, that can cause problems downstream of it, and then the problem grows through the rest of the board. So just as good general maintenance, when I worked on this yesterday, I went ahead and I rebuilt the power supply. I replaced all the capacitors that are in it. I replaced some of the Zener diodes. I replaced a couple of the op amps that are in it, and a couple op amps over here also, actually, because those proved to be problematic sometimes. And that was mostly general maintenance for the unit. When I got back to the shop yesterday afternoon, somebody asked me, well, did you get it fixed? And I said, well, of course. And they said, well, why did it die? You know, what happened to it? Because it doesn't really get used that often. And what I would suspect is it's the continually and all the time turning the unit on and off and on and off and on and off. You know, when you're working on repairing someone's remote station, you might turn it on and off, you know, a half a dozen times over the course of an hour. When you're doing chime modules, if you're doing 30 chime modules, you might actually turn it on and off anywhere from, you know, it could be 45 to 90 times in the course of a couple hours. And turning systems on and off and on and off sometimes can create problems, especially if you have weakened components, because you have to remember that this was a unit that had been worked on 2 times before. It had problems initially, and apparently not all the problems were found, and it could just be that this chip was a little flaky to start with, and with all the turning on and off over the years, it finally decided to die and everything stopped working. So I just thought I would do a really quick video about this, because maybe it's a little reassuring to people to know that their units aren't the only ones that have problems. Our units have problems also sometimes, and it's not just IM5000 control units. We have a lot of test assemblies. Test assemblies are assemblies that are made up out of parts of certain intercom systems, and we use them to test your equipment sometimes when they come in. Like I have a test jig set up that we use when we work on cassette decks from 4006s, because we do a lot of those, and it's easier than dragging out an entire 4006 to work on it. If you have a test jig or a test assembly that you use all the time, there's wear and tear on that. You're plugging and unplugging connectors and moving wires and changing things around and mounting things and demounting things, and over time it takes its toll on pieces of equipment no matter what it is. And so I think pretty soon I've got to set up a day where I do general shop equipment maintenance. There are certain things I need to do because things show their wear and tear after a lot of use. Anyway, that's a little bit of I hope interesting information about what happens to even our IM5000 control unit. Now I'm going to spend the time. I've got a couple patio speakers to repair, and I have a bunch of IS515s, actually 8 of them, that came from one house that don't seem to work at all correctly, and I have to sort through those. So getting this was repaired was important. Anyway, I hope you found it a little bit interesting, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube. If you subscribe to our channel, you'll get notifications when we post new videos. We try to post at least one a week, so you'll get a notification there's something new that you might be interested in. That's all for today. See you on the next video.